Mr. Parr here. This video is going to concentrate on how to answer questions which involve algorithms with subroutines in, so functions and procedures. So what we're going to do is just work our way through a number of different examples. Okay, as we go through, I'll put basically I'm going to put the question on the board, or sorry, on the screen. Feel free to please pause the video, have a go at the question yourself, and then we'll go through the answers. Simple as that. Okay, so I'm going to start off by sharing my screen. That's the wrong button again every single time. And which one was it? It was, I think it's that one. Okay, here we go. So let's get started. The first question is nothing to do with subroutines. Okay, it's just a little starter activity. Get our brains thinking how to write algorithms. So there you got, a program needs to perform the following tasks: input a number from the user, double the number, input and print the result, and repeat bullets 1 and 2 until the user enters a number less than 0. 5 possible marks. Write an algorithm. Now in this particular instance it says write an algorithm. So this could be a flowchart or it could be pseudocode. Okay, have a go, pause the video, see what you can come up with. Okay, so I'm going to answer this by writing it in pseudocode. Should I do it in red? Yeah, red stands out the best, doesn't it? Okay, so when you go about answering questions like this, it's really important to read the whole what it asks you to do. Now, normally it breaks you down into bullet points. It kind of decomposes it for you. So, you know, input a number, do that first. And then it's quite easy to jump ahead and do this bit next and then that next bit. But if you look, we've got to input a number from the user. That's relatively straightforward. And then double that number, input, and print the result. Okay, but then it says it repeats the first two until the user enters the number less than 0. So we've got to think about how we're going to repeat it first of all. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the first two bits first of all, and then I'm going to add my loop afterwards. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this in the exam. Well, it's up to you really. So I'm going to jump ahead now to do the first. So input a number from the user. So I'll quite simply have a variable. Let's call it. Right, I'm still getting used to this thing. Right, I think. Let's get rid of that. Start again. Hello. New technology, computing teacher struggling. Okay, let's try this again. Right, so it's because I'm left-handed as well. Let's do num equals input enter number. Okay, I've done that. I'm going to tick it off my list. So now it doubles the number input and prints the result. Okay, so we need to have an extra variable. So let's call it double. Let's call it double. It's nice one. Double equals num times 2. Okay, I've done that. I need to print the result, don't I? So print double. Okay, done that. So it's 5 marks. I think I've probably easily got at least 2, maybe 3 marks. So what we need to do now is repeat bullets 1 and 2 until the user enters a number less than 0. So this is going to be condition controlled loop. It's going to loop whilst the number isn't less than 0. Okay, so basically we're going to have a while loop. So it's going to have while. Excuse my handwriting. So what's the condition of my loop? I want it to keep on looping while what? What's my condition? Okay, well the condition is until the user enters a number less than 0. So it's while the num, okay, is greater than or equal to 0. Okay. All right. So while num is greater than or equal to 0, okay, it's going to keep on repeating it. As soon as it is less than 0, it breaks out of the loop. Now, I think on its own, that should be absolutely fine. Okay, that should be absolutely fine. However, I mean, if you was actual a program, it wouldn't actually do this loop because num hasn't been declared before the loop. So you could, just to be safe, put num equals 0 to start off with. Okay, because that way it will make sure it goes into the loop in the first instance, and then it's going to keep on doing that. Okay. You could do, so it does that as well. You could do a do until, okay? So you could do that until num is less than 0, okay? I'm not going to demonstrate that because we don't really do that. We haven't really covered that much in our lessons, but if we wanted me to, I can go over that. Okay, so that's a nice little start. So let's move into functions. Right then. So here's a typical question. It says the kitchen computer. So the idea, it's a, I think the idea it is a school canteen. Okay, just like a fingerprint sensor. So we have a kitchen computer system uses a function called new balance. Okay, remember function is a subroutine. So in other words, when you call that function, it does something. Okay, it calculates a student's new account balance when they pay for a meal. For example, if a student with an account balance of £9.50 has a meal costing £2.20, the new balance function should return, look at that, it should return the new balance of £7.30. Okay, so the idea is it's a function, and when you call the function, it calculates the new balance after the meal cost. Okay, so this is worth 4 marks. It says write an algorithm for, now look at this, write an algorithm for this function. Okay, so what we need to do is an algorithm just for the function, not for calling it, just for defining it. Okay, so when we've looked at examples on this, when we do it in Python, when we define a function, we use that def, and then we put the name of the function, in which case it's going to be new balance. Okay, now I'm pretty sure if you to write it like this in the exam, you'd still get the marks, but I'm going to write it in the way as if we were OCR, like as if we were exam board. Okay, we're using their pseudocode. So how would we do that? Right, we write function. That's the same as literally just doing def. Okay, now it's really important we put the correct name of the function. What have they called it here? New balance. No spaces. Oh, sorry, I forgot to say pause it, have a go yourself, and then move on. Function new balance. Okay, so we're doing this algorithm for this function. Well, first of all, it takes the student's account balance as a parameter. So if you watch my previous video about functions and procedures, parameters are the things or the data required in order for that function to work. So in order for the function to work, we need to know what the student's balance is. And our parameters go in the brackets after we've defined the name of our function. So in this case, it's going to be the account balance. So I'm just going to call it balance. Okay, there we go. So what I've done, I've defined my function and I've defined my parameters. In this case, it's just balance. It takes the cost of, oh, I haven't finished yet. Silly me. Where's my rubber? Sorry, there we go, that's better. So there's 2 balances, there's two parameters. It takes the student's account balance as a parameter. Good. It takes the cost of a meal as a parameter. So I need to put a comma in. Okay, and we're going to put meal cost. Okay, I think that's it. It's done now. Then returns the new account balance. Okay, so remember about functions, they've got to return the account balance. So what we have to do is before we return the new account balance, we need to calculate what it is. Okay, So how do we calculate? It was quite simply, oh, where's my comma gone? It's going to be their balance, take away the meal costs. So we're going to have, what should we call it? Should we just call it, let's just call it, we could call it new balance, but that's also the name of our function. Okay. I'll call it new bal. New bal. Okay, it's going to be balance minus meal cost. Okay, so that calculates what it is, takes the balance, takes away the meal cost. We're not finished yet, because if you remember, we have to return the new balance. So we then finish off with, oh, excuse my rubber, can't spell. Okay. We must then return new bal. Okay. And I think we can write end function. I can't remember if I have to do that or not, but there's no harm in doing it. Okay. So it takes the student accounts as a parameter, balance, there it is. It takes the cost of a meal of a parameter, meal cost. We then calculate what the new balance is going to be, which is our balance minus meal cost, and return it. If you don't have that word return, you don't get the mark. Okay. I'm just going to change my ink color. Okay, there we go. And so, for example, I'm just going to put a little star there. You could have actually fit those two on. You could have just done return balance minus meal cost. You don't necessarily have to create a variable called new bal. I just do it because it's easier to understand then. Okay, so both of those would fit onto the same row. Okay, so that's that one. Okay, let's move on to the next question. All right. So feel free to pause it, have a go at this yourself if you want. A teacher researches the length of time students spend playing computer games each day. Too long. The teacher asks students how long they spend completing homework. Students answer in minutes and hours. For example, 2 hours and 15 minutes. The teacher would like to create an algorithm which will display the students' inputs in minutes only. Why is that's a bit of a silly question? There's a bit of a mistake there. Asking for computer games and then it asks for how long they spend completing homework. Let's just assume that's the same thing, computer games. So the teacher would like to create an algorithm which will display students' inputs in minutes only. So first question, identify the input and output required in this algorithm. Okay, pause it, have a go. Okay, so the inputs. So students answer in minutes and hours. So input's going to be minutes and hours. And what needs to be output? Okay, so the teacher would like to create an algorithm that will display the students' inputs in minutes only. So the output is just going to be in minutes. Okay, that's relatively straightforward. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, a program is created to convert hours and minutes into a total number of minutes. If you didn't know, there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. The teacher wants to create a sub-program. Notice how it hasn't said if it's a function or a procedure. The teacher wants to create a sub-program to perform the calculation. The program has been started but not complete. Complete the design for the program. So we have hours equals input, minutes equals. Notice that there's no int and there's no casting. You don't necessarily need it for this. Okay. Then we have final total equals blank, and then it prints the final total. All right, so what we need to do now is we need to complete the function and here. Okay, so the way I'd normally go about it, I'd have a go doing our function first and then filling in. So pause it, have a go. Okay, right, so the first thing we need to do is give the function a name, okay? Because in order to call it, the function has to have a name. So let's call it, we can't use minutes because that's what it is, okay? Minutes already exists as a variable. So let's call it, what should we call it? Convert. I'll call it convert min, I'm going to call it. Okay, so I've given it a name. So in this particular instance, we require a parameter. Okay, so we're actually trying to find, actually, no, that's not very good. Let's change that because it's not just what we're doing. It is hours and minutes to the total number of minutes, right? So we're not just doing that. We're going to call it, I'm going to call it total min. Total min. Okay, so what are our parameters? So it's going to convert hours and minutes into a total number of minutes. So our two parameters are hours and mins, because that's what the students are typing in. They're typing in their hours and minutes. Okay, so those are our two bits of data we require in order to work out the total minutes. Okay, so basically what we need to do is we have to convert the hours into minutes and add it onto the minutes as well. So two ways to do it. Let's do it using a variable and then without using a variable. So we're going to have it, I'm going to call it total is equal to what's going to be our hours times 60. So that converts number of hours into minutes plus mins. Okay. Now the key thing about function, if you remember, functions is they have to return a value. In this case, we're going to return total. Okay. So we're nearly there. So let's go through our function again. We are declaring it as total min. We're going to call it total min. It has two parameters, hours and minutes. Okay. And then it calculates what it is, assigns to a variable called total, and then returns that total. So how do we call it? So final total, we call it by what's the name of our function? It's total min. Remember, total min has two parameters, hours and mins. Okay. So in which case our arguments, when we call our function, it's what data goes into there. Well, it's going to be our variables hours. In this case, it's minutes. Okay. So what that's going to do is going to take that variable hours and minutes. Okay. Then it calculates it and returns and assigns it to the variable final total. Okay. It does get confusing because when we define a function here, these parameters, hours and mins, that hours is different from that hours because that refers to that variable. That's the argument. It takes a bit of practice to get your head around it, really. Okay, so that's how that one works. Okay, you can pause it if you want to copy it down. I'm just going to now very quickly just adapt this function here of a way of doing it, but without using that total variable. Okay. So an alternative way of doing it is you could just quite simply, let's change my pen color to blue, so it's an alternative. Quite simply, what you could do is not use the variable and just return. What was it? It was hours times 60 plus mins. Okay, so what that will do is just calculate it and just return it straight through the function, so that will be assigned to final total. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Oh, this is always a good one. Did this in another practice task. Rewrite this flowchart as pseudocode, 4 possible marks. Pause it, have a go. I'm going to go through the answers. Okay, so let's go through it quite simply. So we've got an input here. Look at the shape. It's a parallelogram. So it's going to be an input. I'm going to use a variable. I'm going to say, come on, mins equals input enter. Oops, minutes played. Right, so now we have a decision because it's a diamond. The arrows go down, they don't go back up or loop back up, so it's going to be an if statement. And then our condition is in the middle if minutes is greater than 120. Now don't write minutes, write down what your variable's called. So mine's called mins. If mins greater than 120, then, because I'm writing pseudocode, not Python. So if we meet this condition, if the mins is greater than 120, let's have a look. It needs to say you played games for too long. So remember, the indentation is really important. Print. You played games for too long. Careful with your quote marks. Okay. Our no is our else. Make sure your if and else line up. Okay. So you're under your time limit. So print you are under your joined up your time limit. Okay, and let's just end our if. Okay, look at the indentation, nice and neat, pretty straightforward. That's it. Don't need a start and an end. Now if you did, I mean, there is sort of call for, like, you could have like begin and end if you really wanted to, but don't worry too much about that. Right, let's go back to some more tricky stuff with procedures and functions. Okay, next question. Pause it, read it, have a go. A library gives each book a code made from the first 3 letters of the book title in uppercase, followed by the last 2 digits of the year the book was published. For example, Poetry from the War was published in 2012 and will be given the code POE, because it's the first 3 letters, 12, because it's the last 2 of the year. All right. Complete the following pseudocode for a function definition that would take the book title and year as parameters and return the book code. Okay, let's break this down slowly. Complete the following pseudocode for a function definition. Remember, this isn't the function running, it's just defining it. That will take in the book title and year as parameters. So remember, when you have a function, the stuff in brackets are the parameters. Right, let's stop there. Book title is already there, and year that isn't. So hello, goodbye. Oh my word. Ah, sorry. Yeah, okay. Got book title and got year as parameters. Okay. So part A equals title dot substring. Okay. Now you might not have seen this before, but in Python, when we have a string, you know, you can do slices. So you could have sort of name. Well, I do like name 0. Let's say in the variable, put my name in as Tim. Okay, name 0 would be the T. That's 0. Now in Python, if we did name 0, 2, that takes anything from the first up to, but not including the third. So that would be 0, 1, 2. That would say TI. Okay. Now in OCR pseudocode, substring is kind of like the same as that, but in the substring it has the beginning and the end. Okay. So in this instance, it's saying when you have a substring of title, it's your starting up to and including. Okay. So in this case, let's go back up the first 3 letters of the book. So 0 is going to be the first, 0, 2. Okay. 0, 1, 2. It's different to Python. Okay. In Python, if we wanted the first 3 letters, we'd have to have 0 to 3, because that would be 0, 1, 2, because it ignores the third in Python. Okay, it's exclusive. So in this case, when we have a substring, it takes the first 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, beginning, end. Okay, part B, sorry, is the year substring 2, 2. So if you think about it, it goes 0, 1, 2, and the next 2 letters. Okay, I think. No, actually, ignore me. I got that wrong. I've got the completely wrong. That should be 3. Right. Sorry. Ah, my word. It's late. Sorry. My apologies. The substring, when you use the substring in OCR pseudocode, that's your starting point and how many characters on you want to go. So you want to go 3, 0, 1, 2. Okay. So the last bit is missing from this in a function. Okay. So what's missing from a function? What's the main difference between a function and a procedure? A function returns a value. And that's the word which is missing here. It is quite simply return. Okay. And that's your 3 marks. Year, 3, return. I will double check about that. All right. Next. Okay. So this one, quick little tip, by the way, if you have a question which uses these kind of I and I, that normally means you can the previous question your answer. Now this question does rely on it. Okay, it says use pseudocode to write an algorithm that does the following. Okay, inputs the title and year of a book from a user. Let's do that first. Okay, nice and easy. So title is input. Please enter book title. You get a mark just for getting these right. So I've done the title under the year. We'll do year equals input. Please enter year published. Excuse my handwriting. Load of rubbish. Okay, so I've done that. I've done that first bit. Uses the library code function above to work out the book code. Okay, so what we have to do, we have to call the function. All right, so in addition to calling it, you need to, because the function returns a value, you need to have a variable to store that value. So I'm going to call it code equals. Okay, we have to call the function. What did we call it? Library code. Make sure it matches. Library code. Remember, functions have 2 parameters, title and year. So that's the data we need. All right. So what have we called it? Title and year. So we do title, year. Okay, done that. Now the next bit, permanently stores the new book code to the text file bookcodes.txt. Now we haven't spent much time doing this. So when we're working with files, remember, with files you have to open them, either read it, write it, do whatever, and then close it. So let's call it file equals open. Now you could have open write. Yeah, let's do it open. Yeah, open write. What this means, we're going to open the file in write mode. What's the name of the file? It's called bookcodes.txt. Okay, that opens it. What do you want to do? You want to write to it. File dot write or write line. Either's fine. What do we want to write to it? Okay, it's the new book code. What's that variable called? It's called code. And really importantly, file.close. There we go. Okay, this is where a lot of people struggle to get the mark. Okay, but these ones you can definitely get. You know, I've always told you, always get marks just for entering data and using correct variables. Okay. A lot of people struggle to use the information from the previous question as well. So just make sure if you have I, whatever, you can use information from the previous question. Okay. Next one. Next question. Oh, there isn't a next question, and that's the last one. That's all right. Cool. All right. Hope that's been helpful. Any questions? Send me an email. Hope it's been useful.